So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm really excited to be here, you guys. Many of you know me. My name's Terrisa Bukovinac. I'm the founder and executive director of Pro-Life San Francisco. We are a grassroots, millennial-led activist organization representing pro-life thought from across the political, religious, and ideological spectrum. I myself am an atheist. I'm a registered Democrat. I serve on the board of directors for Democrats for Life of America. I'm also on the advisory board for Rehumanize International and have spent years representing secular pro-life. And I actually got my start in ground activism through my experience at my first Rehumanize conference in April of 2016, just a few months before I launched Pro-Life San Francisco, which was about 1 month before Trump was elected president in 2016, obviously very unexpectedly. So since then, a lot has happened in the pro-life movement, and I've gotten significantly more involved than I used to be. Today, I'm going to be speaking specifically on activism, which is a super broad topic, but we are at a Consistent Life Ethic conference, and so our topics are very broad. And the presentation that I'm going to give you today is hopefully something that you can, and I believe that you can use to apply to just about any social justice issue that you're working towards. I myself got started in actually animal rights activism before getting involved in the pro-life movement, and I have done some racial justice organizing as well. But a lot of my personal experience is going to come from the pro-life cause. But again, these are skills and tactics that I've learned over the years that you can use for whatever social justice issue you are pursuing at this time. And I want to mention also that, first of all, because I'm recording on my phone, I had to take actual written notes for this presentation, which is kind of funny to me. But I want to give credit to the great thinkers who have developed these ideas of activism and nonviolent direct action, like Gene Sharp, Otpor, who is a social justice movement that occurred in the early 2000s in Eastern Europe, in the Bosnian, Serbian, and Croatian conflicts. Also, Canvas is a really important organization that I've learned a lot from. And of course, Saul Alinsky, the author of Rules for Radicals. I highly recommend checking out all of these activists' writings for you to use in your nonviolent struggle. And I think it's important to recognize that there are very, very notable examples of nonviolent direct action that have been successful in history, most notably the civil rights movement in the United States during the mid-century, and the work of Gandhi and Otpor, like I mentioned before, and other global, other movements across the globe. And I think it's also worth roping in Operation Rescue, which was an early nonviolent direct action group dedicated to bringing about justice for the unborn. And you'll see that it's very common for social justice movements to be stigmatized and for the work to be affiliated with any associated violence. And I think many of us know that Operation Rescue is generally associated with some violent acts that did occur during the years in which Operation Rescue was very prevalent. So those acts of violence have been assigned to Operation Rescue. However, Operation Rescue was a very, very important nonviolent struggle, which obviously we're still involved in the United States, but their particular movement was instrumental in giving the pro-life movement any kind of real standing in the United States. There were no office pro-life jobs before Operation Rescue came along and developed their philosophies, and not just developing their philosophies, but using these same philosophies of nonviolent direct action to bring attention to their cause. And the story of nonviolent struggle always begins with oppression. And there's things that we need to understand up front about oppression before we engage in the struggle. We need to know that we need to know our oppressor. We need to know who they are. We need to know what they're about, what their rhetoric sounds like, what their values are. We also need to know that our opposition and that oppression is scary and brutal. It's not something easy to confront. It's not something you're going to be able to simply write a press release and or a good blog and the world changes. Oppression requires that we truly get real about the brutality and how scary oppression can be. And we have to understand also that oppression and the oppressors will always punish disobedience. There will always be casualties. People will always get arrested. They will get harmed by maybe tear gas by the police, depending on your particular struggle. But there will always be casualties, and we have to know that up front. And we need to find ways in this struggle to use the oppression that we're facing or that a particular group is facing in order to turn it into a strength. And because the oppressor relies on fear, it's crucial that when we experience confrontations with the oppressor, that we share every detail of what we've learned and we document it for everyone to see, because that is what breaks the spell of fear. When people know exactly what's going to happen when they get arrested, they're much less likely to be afraid of it. It's the unknown that the oppressor uses to drive home that fear tactic. And then if there is someone who has been victimized by the oppressor, if there is a casualty, we must find them. Every person matters. We have to keep track of every single one of our activists at all times in order to ensure that we maintain a successful movement. We can never outspend our oppressors, but we can out-people them. And so we need to keep special track of every single person who joins us in a nonviolent struggle. We also need to build a shared vision of tomorrow. And this is very important because it has to be a shared vision. I see a lot of activists that are, and I'm susceptible to it myself, wanting to pursue my own ideological beliefs. But as organizers, and if we are going to be successful at managing a social justice movement to victory, then we must be listening to what the other people in our movement care about, what kind of vision of tomorrow they want. And so often in the pro-life movement, for example, it's this vision of no one having sex before marriage and everyone wears shirts up to their neck and modest clothing. And for so many, that is not a shared vision. That is not the kind of world that most people necessarily want to live in. And I'm just using that as an example, but it's important to find common ground where we can and really put a fine point on what the actual goal is. And being able to advocate for a vision of tomorrow, a future that you intend to build with the support of your community, it makes your movement way more appealing. You're not just against something, you're for something. And that brings me to the pillars of power. This is probably the most important aspect of understanding activism that I've come across, or at least that's been valuable to me in understanding how to prioritize the work that I do and how to break through some of the fear that comes along with confronting oppressive institutions. And one of the things that we have to understand is that nonviolent direct action it's nonviolent warfare. It is a way of doing battle peacefully. And in order to win, we need political power. Whatever your cause is, you must gain political power in order to achieve victory. And there are 5 main sources of power. There's the ruler or the authority, the institution, the oppressor. There's the people. There's knowledge and skills. There's money and material resources, and also sanctions, which is threat and penalties for disobeying a law. But any institution, any oppressor is standing on pillars of support. And that starts with the bureaucracy, police and military, the judicial system, education, the media, religion, business institutions, and the list goes on and on. But inside all of these pillars are people that can be reached, that can be co-opted, that can be brought to our side. And they are caught in a cycle of obedience. And our goal is to end that cycle of obedience. And people will maintain this cycle for lots of reasons, primarily out of habit. We're taught from a very early age, when we're children, to obey our parents, to obey any authority figure, to obey our teachers, to be obedient to police. And so this idea of always just doing what we're asked to do or what we're told to do is very ingrained into who we are. And it's very difficult to break free, but it absolutely is possible. And it is a must if we are to seek real justice on any of the real issues that we fight for as consistent life ethic activists. There's also the problem of self-interest. A lot of people are making money off of being obedient to these institutions. There is the fear of sanctions. There's apathy that we deal with constantly. There's a lack of self-confidence. People believe that they themselves are not equipped to do the work that is necessary. And yet we all are. A single person can change the world, and they do all the time. One person causes two people, and more and more and more. A handful of people can make an enormous difference. And so it is so important for us to find the confidence within ourselves to say, I can do this. Because of the 50 people that are tuning in right now, there really aren't that many other people outside of us that are willing to even engage with this topic right now. So trust me, it is you. It's not someone else. It's you. There's also a psychological identification that sometimes happens with the oppressor or the oppressive institution. And people all often suffer from a lack of hope. And that's so prevalent in the pro-life movement when, where people have worked lifetimes, decades, trying to end such a brutal injustice. And yet they're still fighting neck and neck. The nation is still 50% pro-life, 50% pro-choice. That can cause people to become extremely hopeless. But there is always hope. Nonviolent direct action and nonviolent struggle has overthrown dictators. It has won social justice movements that people were told would never be won. And it happens all the time. We can win on these issues that we fight for. We need to give people an alternative. And we need to compel them to stop obeying these institutions and stop being complicit in these acts because of their fear. We all must confront and we must overcome those fears if we are ever to seek justice on these issues. The next most important point that I've learned in my activism is the value of unity. There is no victory without unity. And yet unity is one of the hardest things to master in any social justice movement. And I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, oh yes, I'm super into unity. Oh my gosh, I'm unified all the time. But I'm telling you, unity is very, very difficult to manage over time. And in the pro-life movement, for me specifically, that in an election year, you can imagine as a consistent life activist, I have a lot of issues with a lot of positions that people in the pro-life movement take politically and on various other issues. And yet I must find a way of finding common ground with them to work on an issue that is absolutely crucial to advancing human rights. If I'm going to fail to work with other people who are willing to help me on the issue of abortion because of their other political or ideological stances, I am delaying victory for my cause. And it's the same with every cause. And every social justice movement struggles with unity, you can imagine. But remember that if you're looking for ideological purity in your movement, that is a privileged position, because as a person who is a pro-life Democrat atheist, I can tell you that I don't at this moment have that type of community. And in order for me to advance any human rights issue, I'm going to need to unify with people who have different beliefs than me. And I'm asking you to do the same. Now, the flip side of that is that gives you the freedom, and you always have it, but it gives you the freedom to express yourself fully, because you're in full acceptance of other people. Not that you're accepting their ideas, but you're accepting who they are. And you're accepting that even though they disagree with you, they're helping you on this issue. And for me personally, it's given me the confidence to be exactly who I am. I proudly declare Black Lives Matter, even though many people in the mainstream pro-life movement disagree or find that problematic, along with various other things. But I don't have to sacrifice who I am to unify with a cause, and neither do you. And I encourage you to remember that diversity plus unity means victory. And that brings me to my next point, which is comedy is crucial to winning any social justice movement. We must shame the oppressor's behavior. And that doesn't mean that we're shaming individuals. Of course, we recognize the inherent value of every individual, but institutions and oppressive behavior must be called out and they must be shamed. And one of the reasons, or one of the ways that we can very effectively do that, and that social justice movements have done in the past, is to poke fun at the oppressor, to create comedy around their rhetoric in order to address what's happening. There are many examples. I've seen communities in Germany making fun of Nazis that march in their, or used to march in their communities, by making it like a silly parade and cheering for them and giving them awards every time they reach a certain point in their march, and just making it really embarrassing for them, and they don't go back anymore. And many of you know, even in the pro-life movement, there's been a really successful platform with dank pro-life memes. And I think that it's really, really important that we continue to support within our social justice issues comedy that addresses the brutality of the oppression that we are looking to confront. We also need to give people an enemy. And I know that, that sounds a little aggressive for, peacekeepers. But as someone who has organized people for social justice for many years now, we need, in order to get people motivated to come out to become a part of your movement and to get involved in your social media and your on the ground activism and your events, creating an enemy out of the oppressor is the most powerful way to gain people power, historically speaking. I'm not saying it, I love the idea of that, but that's the reality of it. And there's ways that we can do that, without violating our ideology of recognizing people's inherent value. But I think calling out institutions, calling out individuals that uphold oppressive ideologies that are opposed to your specific cause. Those things need to be identified, named, and promoted, and that will help you grow your following. And never give up on organizing. Organizing is extremely difficult to do. Anyone that I've kind of gotten involved in this work eventually comes back and says, "Oh, Terrisa, I've spent so much time creating these events and nobody shows up, and I just feel like I'm doing it wrong, and I reach out to 100 people and only one person comes." That is the nature of activism and organizing. People are afraid. They're not comfortable doing this yet. And the only way to get them more comfortable is to do it and to show them that you're doing it and to document it and to put it out there. We have to remember that we are going to have to work very hard to get people to come out. Just posting an event is not enough. We have to reach out to people individually. We have to keep reminding them how important this is. We have to keep showing them content of other times that you did that. Walk them through the details of what you're going to do so that it doesn't feel as scary. And never give up. Do not ever do not lose hope over people not showing up to your events. It is hard, but it is the name of the game, and you have to keep trying. Giving up is not an option. And I think a really important and famous quote from MLK is his quote on nonviolent direct action, which says, "We who engage in nonviolent direct action are not the creators of tension. We merely bring to the surface the hidden tensions that is already alive." So when we do these types of actions, in San Francisco, we do a lot of action with the megaphone, very disruptive, booming voices, speaking about the injustice of abortion. It is extremely disruptive. People do not like it. They're not happy about it. It's something that even, most pro-life people, mainstream pro-life people will find off-putting. But that is not a signal for us to stop. The reason that it's off-putting and uncomfortable is because it is doing its job, which is to bring to the surface the tensions that already exist in the community. We cannot deal with properly in any significant way with any social justice issue unless we bring the tensions to the surface. And we cannot do that unless we upset a lot of people. So again, it plays into the fear factor. It's uncomfortable being someone who's taking a seemingly unpopular position. But I think it's very likely that most of the positions that we're taking as it relates to the consistent life ethic aren't as unpopular as our community would make us believe. And the more that we're willing to get out and do the scary work, the more likely we are going to get the rest of our community who already agrees with us to come out, to take a stand, and to make a difference for the groups, the people, and the causes that we care about. So thank you so much. That's pretty much my presentation. I don't know if we're able to take questions, but I would love to if we can. So if you have any, throw them up in the chat. I don't know if I'll be able to retrieve, but I'm really glad you're all here.
Terrisa, can you see the chat?
No.
Okay, so guys, if anyone wants to ask a question, just request to share video and audio, and I can approve you to let you in. If no one wants to do that, I can read questions from the chat.
Show me your face. Don't be afraid.
Cowards, get on. Okay, you don't have to. No one is requesting yet. Oh, someone's coming on. Okay. Okay, we have Dr. Michael New on the stream. Welcome, Dr. New.
Yeah, they're great to see everybody. When I straighten the camera slightly, I just wanted to see if tell the story about how she was able to help Kristen Day pose that question to Pete Buttigieg back during the Democratic presidential primaries.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. New. So good to see you. For those of you who don't know Dr. New, you should totally follow him, by the way. He's amazing. He's been taught at Ivy League school in the world. I had the idea last summer that I'm part of constituents on the abortion because the vast majority of us want abortion regulated, restricted, and taxpayer funding free. So I just fed up with the fact that we pro-life Democrats are censored every step of the way, just went to the literal debates, every single Democratic debate leading up to the convention, including the convention, with a booming megaphone, with activists that I was able to organize in every major city where the debates took place. And we had the largest group of any like ideological group outside of like, specific candidates there consistently at these debates. And so Fox News picked it up. They knew like pro-life Democrats are ready for a fight. They could tell by the sound of my voice and the yelling from the megaphone. Like, you got to get one of these. It creates this, you automatically have this authority, and people are like, oh my gosh, like I must have been misthinking this issue because I'm not confident enough to speak about my beliefs about it into a megaphone. And it automatically gives you authority on the issue. You really need to get comfortable with this particular tool of activism. But I believe that it is that effort with the megaphone that ultimately Fox picked up the question from Kristen Day, who's the executive director of Democrats for Life of America. And she asked Mayor Pete Buttigieg in a town hall televised on a major network, do you want the vote of the 21 million Democrats in the United States today? And he basically said no. So keep that in mind when you are casting your vote.
For joining us on the stream, Dr. New.
Yep. Thank you all.
Okay, we have another person that I'm going to add up. It looks like Robin would like to pop on. Approved her. What's up, Robin?
Hey. So I'm using this opportunity of attending a conference with my children to ask a question about how can those with young children or are working full-time become activists within their own community or even out of their homes during this quarantine that we are still doing in our house, at least for the most part. How can we become more active as we basically live our daily lives?
Thank you for asking. That is a great question. I think the most important we have right now is social media. And that's something that any stay-at-home mom can do with. It's really important for people to see individuals holding the particular ideologies that we hold openly. And the best way to actually get that information out there and multiply that and to magnify our voices is to post on social media. It can be time consuming, posting various groups or, just recording a little video of like why you feel the way you feel about that particular issue. Or just sharing other people's content and making comments of your own to kind of get some kind of social media traction and develop yourself as a public figure is ideal. I think it's really important that we all are front facing as much as possible on this issue. People need to see that there are real people behind, not my abortion issue necessarily, all issues. They need to see that there are individuals advocating for these particular issues. And another thing that you can do is just testing and holding a sign. We do activism with children all the time. It's very impactful to see a diversity of people outside. That includes ages. And many of the people that, I've spent a lot of time with survivors of the abortion Holocaust. It's a very inflammatory name, but they are a fantastic organization that trains young people to be pro-life. But many of those people that have gone through training and started in their youth as activists with their parents become a pro-life movement. For parents to get their kids involved in these issues, all of these issues, recognize that they have a specific role in changing the world and that we can do it, but we need their help.
Well, I to get on Twitter even more than I already am.
Do it more. Tag everyone. You're muted, Herb.
Hey, thank you, Terrisa. I'm going to head over to the stage now because we are going to closing remarks. Terrisa, feel free to tell everyone where they can follow you and how to get involved with your campaigns. I'll see you later. Join me on the stage in 2 minutes.
Bye, Herb. Everybody follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Terrisa Lynn. That's TerrisaLin. And please follow Pro-Life San Francisco at Pro-Life F. S like Sam, F as in Frank, S like San, F as in Francisco. Follow us. Have a great day. Thanks for joining.